Get ready for 3 books that you can read to completely transform your tokenomics game. That's what we're going to dive into today. Let me begin with a massive spoiler. None of these books are about tokenomics. None of them are about blockchains, blockchain tokens, blockchain technology, none of it. So how can I still be recommending them as some of the best books that you can read for tokenomics? Well, as I've said many times before, tokenomics is a new field. There is still disagreement over what the word means or whether it refers to any real knowledge at all. So, for starters, that tells us that there are going to be fewer books on the subject out there. But you might say to me that I ought to at least be recommending you whatever few books there are out there. But I'm not. When I decided that it was time to level up my own understanding, I deliberately chose to read outside of blockchain and crypto altogether. Indeed, when I first started that research push, that was the only place I was reading. Elsewhere. There's one reason for this, and that's that tokenomics is interdisciplinary. That's what's illustrated in this diagram taken from a well-known paper in our community. So, if you want to think about tokenomics in a more open and innovative way that's less limited by the tools and applications and thinking that we have around today, reading material from these outside disciplines can be a great idea. But actually, in my case, I have to admit that my reasons for choosing to read outside of the core field were a little more personal and emotional. I only started working in blockchain quite late, in 2020. And even though I had limited blockchain experience, my early clients valued the strong quantitative skills and business reasoning that I had to offer. To do the best with what I had, I would take direction from people who had been in the industry for years and look to blockchain projects which appeared to be enjoying immense success. Of course, in 2022, we all came to see that much of this was sheer nonsense, or worse still, outright fraud. I was really disappointed by these events, not just for the financial and professional impacts they had on me, but because I'd come to care and hold a genuine belief and enthusiasm for the potential of this technology. And yet, once we got to the end of that dumpster fire, somehow some embers were still glowing. I had this intuition that I had not just been kidding myself, and there really was something here at the heart of this technology. And I felt that I had to find some way of making sense of that, but I'd just come out of 2 years of taking my lead in cues from supposed experts who were all over this revolutionary new world order, which completely throws out all of the old rules. So you're right, I no longer trusted them, and I couldn't. And that's why I took my seeking elsewhere. I essentially launched into my own epic do-your-own-research quest into tokenomics, to build up beliefs and understanding on my own terms, things that I could believe, because I saw how they stacked up for myself. Not because I was following others, getting swept up in a wave of mania-driven groupthink. And so, to choose where to start looking to learn more about tokenomics, it was clear to me that the answer was economics. Granted that economics is only one of the fields that's shown in this diagram, but I think it happens to be one of the most relevant, and that may be a biased opinion because I studied economics to master's level and was lucky to have done so with full and genuine enthusiasm for the subject and to have had great teachers, professors, and researchers to learn from. A lot of people who have not studied economics as it's taught academically will not appreciate that it's a really broad social science. In its most general formulations, economics studies value-seeking behavior in human beings and how environmental circumstances, including our interactions with each other, shape that. So those are the deeper reasons why I think that these books have the power to be broadly informative, and why I will still recommend these books to people who want to go deep in on tokenomics, or whatever else you think we ought to be calling it, even though that these books are not directly about the subject. And of course, I hope that you will get great value from them too. So let's begin. Now, if I had to limit myself to one recommendation, and one recommendation only, this book would be it. Virtual Economies, Design and Analysis, authored by Vili Ledomvirta, a professor at University of Oxford, and Edward Castronova, a professor at Indiana University, Bloomington. The book was published in 2014 when Bitcoin was barely on the map, so the virtual economies that are referred to in the title are mostly traditional video game economies. So why is this my top pick if it is focused on this niche area of gaming? Even if I were to learn that you had no interest in Web3 or blockchain gaming yourself. Two reasons. The first is that traditional economics doesn't have that much to say about deep economic design and engineering. But video games, on the other hand, do. Some economists would balk at this claim, so let me explain what I mean. The development of traditional economics has been defined by a limited ability to intervene in material world economies due to the size, complexity, the resource intensivity of these systems, difficulties with data, and also difficulties due to serious ethical complications that come with affecting the lives and welfare of living human beings. Partly as a result of this, economics has developed as more of a passive observer science rather than an active technological one, a discipline that studies phenomena that already exist but that cannot be substantially altered or re-engineered. As a result, conventional economics only provides us with a few crude levers to pull on when we want to make changes to our economic systems. In a video game, on the other hand, you may be creating an entire economy outright from nothing. Not only that, this time you can control many of the underlying economic rules explicitly in full detail. All we need now are bits and code as raw material, and because the game only needs to cater to the whims of fun and fantasy, we are free to explore a much larger realm of economic possibility than we would be able to in the material realm. And because the players are voluntary participants in this virtual economic process, there is greater ethical leeway for experimentation. Topping it off, economic actions in these games are natively digital, which makes the generation, collection, and analysis of data much, much easier. All these freedoms categorically set virtual economies apart, and much of these freedoms also apply to crypto-based economic systems. So what's great about this book is that it introduces you to a side of economics that you may have never seen before as a student, one that directs economic theory and thinking into deep engineering-oriented problem solving. The second reason why I recommend this book is that it is self-aware of just how radical a departure that is from conventional economic studies. And it is happy to dedicate time to addressing some of the big, profound questions that this raises. That includes making sense of how something non-material and virtual, which offers no claim on anything except some other virtual non-material thing, could ever come to have real value. The answer is, of course, that value is largely a mental phenomenon. And most of the things that we find valuable in our modern material economies are just as far removed from biological survival value as any of the virtual goods in our games. But at the same time, the book avoids becoming this sweeping kind of blue sky piece because it balances that open discussion of big questions with real-world case studies that include many of the most famous games of the last 2 decades and reviews of concrete, practical economic mechanisms and instruments that you can apply to your own economic designs. Rounding up, here are a few ideas that have stayed with me since reading this book. You don't always want to optimize your game economies for economic efficiency. Those inefficiencies can be part of the game. Fun fact, the Chinese Communist Party already banned a non-blockchain digital currency that was threatening the yuan in 2007 before Bitcoin was invented, Tencent's Qcoin. Next, it's been seen multiple times that players who live in an economy with an experience of currency will improvise currency from in-game objects if they are not provided with a means to do so by game developers. And lastly, large virtual economies cannot be completely controlled. Interventions can have surprising effects, and continuous monitoring and tuning is essential. Okay, number 2 on our list is Matchmakers, the new economics of multi-sided platforms. It's authored by David Evans, who has had a career that includes teaching economics at UCL and University of Chicago, and Richard Schmalensky, who's been a professor at MIT and served on the Council of Economic Advisors to the US President. As the subtitle says, this is a book about multi-sided platforms. So what are they exactly? Well, in essence, it's a business that facilitates the creation and workings of a marketplace. That's what the platform term refers to, a platform that enables that market. In addition to that, we're referring to a specific kind of marketplace here, one where there are two or more groups present, and where the benefits that they receive from this market are heavily influenced by how many users are present in each group. Each group, as such, represents a different side of this market. So that's why this business concept is referred to as a multi-sided platform. Now, you may not have heard of the term before, but you're certainly familiar with some of the prime examples. They include all of the greatest unicorns from the Web 2 revolution, including Facebook, Google, Airbnb, Uber, and earlier titans like Windows, Macintosh, and even the internet itself. But this isn't just another book that retells the success stories of these companies. Rather, it focuses on explaining how deep economic features of their business models have allowed these companies to succeed by doing things that appear to fly in the face of conventional wisdom about good business management. Consider this example. When was the last time that you were told that the best way for you to create a sustainable profit was to pay your customers to use your products? That advice defies common sense, let alone the lessons that you get from a traditional business education. And yet, that's exactly how one of the apps in the book, OpenTable, found its success. Importantly, those payments were not a temporary marketing promotion. They were a long-term feature. And so Matchmakers delivers a clear, systematic examination of those underlying economic forces that make such unconventional management choices winning strategies for success. So why recommend a book that is so incredibly focused on looking at the old world case studies of Web 2? Well, arguably, blockchain technology vastly expands the opportunity for building new kinds of multi-sided platforms and to challenge Web 2 incumbents. That's because the technology, in principle, makes the design, scaling, and operation of the platform deliverable at low cost. And if that's so, it will really pay to understand the economic factors that underlie multi-sided platforms in detail, because they are certainly not trivial. You can use that understanding to guide an informed thesis of what kinds of features and processes are going to matter in your token economy and how those might change as your economy grows. Surprisingly, though, I think that this book is just as important to you if you are not working on a multi-sided platform business. The key reason for that is that it will help make clear when you really are working on one and when you are not. You need this corrective more than you think. Startup culture is so infused with the success stories of those giant Web 2 MSPs that many founders unwittingly assume that that's simply how all digital businesses should be run, blockchain ones included. But that's not the case. The book makes clear that the unusual winning strategies depend on specific underlying factors, and if those aren't there in your project, you risk running your business into the ground by trying to follow the same approach. The worst possibility is that founders pin their entire growth strategy on some half-understood multi-sided platform concept. The worst example I've seen here is the repeated vacuous appeal to network effects. These references find their way into way too many pitch decks and lend superficial plausibility to pure make-believe. They basically say that more users create more benefits for more users, so even more of them will be irresistibly drawn to the business, leading to more users, leading to inexorable, inevitable success. That's the logic that basically underpins staking rewards, right? The rewards would pull in more users, and the network effects from those users will inevitably pull up the project by its own bootstraps. Guys, we know that's not how it works. Matchmakers makes clear that yes, network effects are definitely a thing, and that they are an essential determinant of multi-sided platform dynamics and what makes them succeed. But there is a lot more nuance to this idea than is properly understood. As a general summary, you have same-side network effects and cross-side network effects. And in some situations, those same-side network effects can be negative and in others positive, depending on how the cross-side effects work. Multi-sided platform success requires that you pay careful attention to understanding the network effects that apply to each of your specific groups in your specific market, as well as the balance and interaction between them. And that may require you to craft strategies that nurture and regulate each of these groups in a careful sequence. There's another related insight that's made really clear by this book, and that's that even though all of these different businesses share some deep structural characteristics, that does not lead to a one-size-fits-all formula for success. Every successful strategy depends quite particularly on who the users are and what they are exchanging. And yet, even learning that is useful because it teaches you that these are details that you have to pay attention to and study intently in order to formulate strategies with the best chances of success. And indeed, the multiple case studies offered in this book will furnish you with lots of ideas and examples for the variety of factors that can be involved and examples of things that worked and things that did not. Great, time for book number 3, Who Gets What and Why? It's authored by Alvin Roth, a winner of the Nobel Prize for Economics and a professor at Stanford and Harvard. This book is, in a way, also about multi-sided markets, but specifically about markets where some kind of matching is essential to the transaction that needs to take place. Consider, for example, the matches that people want for a dating or long-life partner. It isn't just any man or woman that will do, but a match between a particular pair that matters. This also applies to the match between students and specific colleges, surgeons and their new fellows, and the most extraordinary example explored in this book, which is the match between a kidney donor and someone who is in need of a kidney transplant, also needs to match with the donor's biology in order for that kidney to be safely received. Now, as you can see from these examples, markets with these kinds of matching requirements tend to only have two sides. That's unlike the multi-sided platforms we were looking at earlier. But don't make the mistake of thinking that these two books are substitutes for each other. There is actually quite little overlap between them. Matchmakers focuses on revealing the business dynamics of the multi-sided platform, taking more of a bird's eye view and drawing out some of the hidden generalities about this structure and how to turn it into a business success. Who Gets What and Why instead zooms in on more of the particulars of two-sided matching markets, and instead of focusing on the business performance of the market platform, instead looks at exploring and understanding the economic outcomes and experiences of the market participants, the users, and crucially, how their outcomes are altered by the rules of the market, which makes this book much more specifically about market design. The author provides us with a simple, memorable framework of what makes a good market. We should design them to be thick, meaning they have lots of participants, fast, efficient, delivering outcomes of high quality or value, safe, meaning that taking part won't risk you getting tricked or conned, and of course, simple to use. But all this is easier said than done. These market attributes do not come as a package, and they frequently trade off against each other. Increasing market numbers to make a market thick can also make it slow, congested, and inefficient. This book explores the importance of these key attributes and how different rules help to change those key outcomes for users. So what does all this have to do with blockchain or crypto? Well, one of the core features of the technology is that it allows disintermediated economic interaction, direct peer-to-peer transactions, which effectively allows two sides of any market to come together and exchange. But as the book makes clear, that direct peer-to-peer transactability is not by itself enough. The economic benefits and possibilities will also depend on the rules of the market within which those two sides interact. This suggests that market design will be a key component of some of the most exciting blockchain innovations to come. But further to that, blockchain technology also gives us a new kind of rule-making mechanism, cryptography. And as the book explains with many examples, A common reason why many good markets end up unraveling and failing is because rule breaking creeps into the system in a way that eventually leads everyone to break the rules as well. Those kind of situations can be better avoided by making use of the native cryptographic mechanisms that blockchain has to offer. This allows us to make rules secure and enforceable at low cost to unknown participants who are physically dispersed all over the world. Let's end with some key takeaways. First, the rules matter. This book is all about how they change the outcomes for market participants in dramatic ways. But they don't always play out in the ways that you expect. You will have to experiment. No design is final. Players and situations change, and the rules also need to adapt. Domain expertise, which it means understanding of the users and the market, is vital. Alvin talks about how he needed to partner with someone who really understood the markets he was trying to help out in order to deliver the best results on his consulting. And elaborating on that point, economics expertise is not always strictly necessary. This help he got came from a non-economist, and the book also has other examples of non-economists who simply thought their way to optimal solutions. And so that's a wrap. I was actually going to review 6 books, but I had a lot on my plate this week with an upcoming exam and getting another really special video ready for you in a fortnight. But let me know if you enjoyed this one, and I'll be happy to share the remaining non-tokenomics books for you on this Tokenomics books shortlist. See ya.